The ocean is often associated with inner peace, tranquility, and nature's beauty. The sound of the waves, a scenic view. Way back when, humanity stared out at the deep blue abyss and wondered what lay beneath. Unfortunately, mankind's discoveries influenced our video games. I've never shied away from my love for platforming games. Whether they are 2D side-scrollers or 3D collectathons, they have shaped my gaming experiences and feature some of my favourite childhood memories. But even in adulthood, there is a nagging gameplay element that always floods into my fun. I hate underwater levels, and I don't think I'm alone. This video concept first popped into my head during a playthrough of the recently released Switch port of Super Mario 3D World. I was enjoying the game, steaming through levels and having a blast. However, when it came to collecting the green stars to draw the game to its conclusion, I noticed there were particular levels I'd been avoiding, and there was a definite link between them. And that's when it all came back to me, and it sent me for a loop. My mind filled with anxiety and flashbacks passed me by. I was drowning. The topic of underwater levels in video games is one that has been met with immediate hostility. I've asked friends, I've asked subscribers, and I've even asked other YouTubers for their thoughts on them, and the reaction has been surprisingly similar across the board. Almost a unanimous sense of hostility, with a hint of, they can be alright. I wonder what encourages that. I asked my girlfriend what she thought of underwater levels too. As she isn't as game obsessed as me, she'll often offer a unique perspective I haven't already anticipated. She answered me with this statement: I don't like them, they are hard to use. We both shared a laugh at the grammar of that sentence, but I do think she's fundamentally onto something. There is something obtuse in the design of underwater levels that can feel aggravating and unsatisfying. But is it as simple as one issue? I'm not criticizing the quality of any of the platformers shown in this video today. In fact, I'd say they're all bona fide classics. I'm simply looking to explore why these levels bring about a negative connotation and whether my prejudice towards them is justified. I believe there are two key arguments for the hatred that underwater levels receive. First up, the drastic changes their introduction often brings to the gameplay of their respective games. Let's start with the quintessential platformer, the original Super Mario Bros. Nintendo likes to re-release this one because despite the genre evolving a lot, the gameplay still holds up. The simple mechanics of moving back and forth, jumping onto enemies, and holding down a run button to increase your speed were groundbreaking at the time and still feature in many platformers today. While I personally prefer the 3D Mario outings, I can't knock the quality of the 2D games, and it all started here. The introduction of underwater levels completely changes up the way Mario feels. We shift from a refined platform game to what feels like the earliest iteration of Flappy Bird. Gone is Mario's snappy quick jump, and in its place is a floaty, elongated swimming trajectory. If you have a fire flower on hand, these sections are a walk in the park, but it almost feels like a necessity. Mario is far more vulnerable than he usually would be above ground, and when you partner this with the erratic movement of enemies like bloopers, it almost feels like a different game entirely. Super Mario Bros. 3 acknowledged Mario's underwater vulnerability with the inclusion of the frog suit power-up. This gave Mario improved movement, tying swimming to the D-pad instead of tapping the jump button. Also accompanied by a huge increase in speed, this suit makes the underwater sections more enjoyable, though a slight mistake can lead you to losing the power-up completely. Honestly, it feels like a band-aid that doesn't necessarily fix the problem I have. As well as this, the frog suit alters how Mario functions on land, forcing him to hop rather than sprint, and because of this, there's a great chance you may end up using it at the wrong time in the wrong level. The frog suit feels like it could benefit from being context sensitive, like the Karibo's shoe power-up, found within levels in set locations where we need it most. Like I alluded to earlier, the Mario underwater levels aren't necessarily bad. They definitely add a bit of variety to the gameplay and standard side-scrolling, but it's always been a contrast that I've dreaded engaging with. I mentioned my preference to the 3D Mario outings, and underwater levels leave a similar mark here too. Like Super Mario Bros., Mario 64 still holds up as a 3D platformer. Maybe not as much as some of his other recent outings, but it's undeniable that he still feels great to control and offers lots of flexibility to the player. Double backflips, side flips, and long jumps are just part of his varied arsenal, which is one of the reasons this game stood out on release, and then you hit the water. The previous free and liberating platforming is gone, and you're confined to a slow-moving pace. Collect 8 coins in this gameplay style? No thank you, give me the never-ending staircase. Mario now has to turn underwater on a 360-degree axis, which can lead to his movement feeling slower and less responsive. It feels like a harsher contrast to how he controlled in the 2D games, and it really highlights the lows of this fantastic adventure. Banjo-Kazooie is probably up there as my favourite 3D platformer, and I think it still holds up too. While Banjo improves underwater sections by giving more movement variety, Banjo paddles with his feet and Kazooie swims with her wingspan, it doesn't feel all that enjoyable, more so than Mario did in 64. Banjo and Kazooie have a large and varied moveset. The Talon Trot is introduced early as a concise and fast way of traversing the landscape, and flight pads are introduced shortly after. Flight feels so seamless and fun, so it's a shame how defenseless and slow the characters are underwater comparatively. Both of these games also include a key gameplay feature that adds to the realism of their respective underwater sections. And this is my second key reason why I think the underwater sections get a bad rap. Drowning isn't fun. These games opt for a realistic implementation of water despite featuring a moustached man who can yeet a giant dinosaur and a bear with a bird in his backpack. There's a tonal disconnect with the setting, gameplay, and the imposed reality of drowning to your death. There are challenges within these games built around the limits of oxygen. For example, Clanker's Cavern introduces a puzzle where you must swim to the bottom of the level, through a key to activate it, and make it out of there without drowning. As an older, more experienced player, I take better note of the nearby bubbles and realise this doesn't have too many stakes attached. But as a child, this added to my player anxieties, and I will always dread entering Clanker's Cavern if I boot up Banjo-Kazooie because of it. I think Rare may have actually realised this, as the game's sequel features a water level where you can oxygenate the water using Mumbo's magic, completely removing the fear of drowning entirely. Speaking of anxieties, I've not even touched upon Sonic yet. You know, that little blue hedgehog who I've spent so much time talking about over the years? Sonic has entirely shaped my childhood platform gaming, and I've replayed the classics hundreds of times over. These games have inherently taught me over the years that going into the water is a bad thing from both of these perspectives. First up, Sonic is a game that rewards you for skilled play. That reward is beating levels fast by making the most of the character's adrenaline-inducing trademark speed. The classic games in particular often have separate routes you can take within a level. A high route, which is quicker but harder to stay on, an average route, which sits in the middle and is a little bit slower, and of course a low route, which sits on the bottom of the level and is the slowest path. This is where water tends to be placed, the pitfall that slows down our favourite hedgehog to lessen stellar speeds. In later years, Sonic Generations would even award you an achievement for beating Chemical Plant Zone without touching any water at all. They were onto something here. That's not the only thing Sonic does to hammer in a hatred towards water. Who can forget, you should all expect this one really, the underwater music. Not only does Sonic drown if you spend too much time submerged, he does so whilst the impending music of dread plays in the background. I'm almost certain that most negative perceptions of underwater levels somehow link back to this drowning mechanic and this music. These examples highlight to me just how easily underwater game mechanics can destroy the pace of gameplay. Open-ended levels can feel overwhelming, slower speed of movement can feel tedious, and a lack of oxygen can literally kill you. With those points in mind, I'm not shocked that I found a lot more enjoyment in underwater game levels that add linearity to their level design, focusing on speed and set pieces, whilst throwing the need for oxygen out of the window. Mario Galaxy massively improved the formula that had been established in Mario 64. While Mario's swim speed isn't too dissimilar and he handles relatively the same, it's very rare in this game to not enter one of these sections without finding a handy Koopa shell nearby. These function like power-ups, contributing significantly to Mario's speed and are very easy to maneuver thanks to the torch-styled crosshair that you use to steer. If you lose one, they respawn and are usually located nearby to your goal, a definite improvement over the limited amount of frog suits available in Super Mario Bros. 3. Even though Mario can still drown to his death, his speed and movement feels much more smooth and in tune with his stellar control on land. Mario Odyssey took this a step further, offering you the ability to turn into a Cheep Cheep. Not only did this improve the control in a context-sensitive manner, it also removed the need for oxygen in 3D Mario sections. By the same token, drowning has never been a problem in the Donkey Kong Country games, which delivers with its levels in both its classic Super Nintendo and modern outings. The classic titles are still guilty of replacing the style of side-scrolling for a slower swim, but do so in a much more palatable fashion. Whereas Mario allowed you to swim through a very open-ended level layout, Donkey Kong takes you through smaller, separated sections and corridors. Because of this, it's harder to stray off of the path and easier to anticipate the hazards that lie in front of you. The Swordfish Engard is also a fantastic partner for these sections, adding to DK's speed and reducing the threat of enemies. Also, if Sonic the Hedgehog introduced the most stressful water music, Donkey Kong definitely gave us the most calming and chill tunes. Aquatic ambience has to be one of the most relaxing video game tracks of all time. Modern DK games such as Tropical Freeze abandon this gameplay concept in favour of much faster paced sections that are far more in line with the rest of the game. DK is given a much larger open area to play with, can move in a variety of different directions, and can also attack enemies while simultaneously boosting his speed. He still has a set path to move along like in classic games, but it's much faster and fun to play through. Rather than dwell on Tropical Freeze too much, I want to address another example that does this exact gameplay style even better. Rayman Origins and Legends established a similar style to Tropical Freeze, and it's hands down my favourite example of underwater gameplay done right. It's a bit ironic really that Sonic the Hedgehog is the fastest character in existence, but the mere presence of water brings him to a halt. Rayman hasn't got time for that. These 2D sections don't sacrifice the game's trademark speed in the slightest, and Rayman's control is a literal recreation of his on-land movement in a submerged setting. On land, Rayman moves left to right with the analog stick. With a press of the right shoulder button, he increases to a sprint. Underwater, this rule also applies. He has a slow swim and a sprint swim. The attack button still gives you that short explosive speed, just like in Donkey Kong. You aren't left feeling vulnerable, and you're always in control. Because of this, set pieces like being chased by a giant underwater serpent feel absolutely exhilarating, with reaction times and sharp control being the focus. These sections are easily highlights of both of these games. When you take a glance at these examples, underwater levels don't actually seem all that bad, and there's plenty more out there I'm sure I've forgotten to mention. I haven't even mentioned Echo the Dolphin, which is of course an entire game built around swimming underwater. Nostalgia often reminds us of our favourite memories from the past. Within gaming, this tends to lead to an inflated sense of just how good some of the old school games really were. We might ignore flaws that cause us to struggle to play through them now, such as difficulty or bad control. I think in relation to these levels and the disdain they bring to me and many others, we actually have a nostalgia towards the fear and challenge these levels actually imposed, and we're potentially remembering them as worse than they actually are. 2D Mario, for example, is still unbelievably polished and very playable, and it's hard to critique a game for offering up a change of pace and shifting gameplay style to keep things interesting. While a loss of traditional control, a drop in speed, increased vulnerability, and an imposed time requirement can come together to make water levels feel unsatisfying or frustrating, I can acknowledge that it's just personal preference, and it's just one take on the level style. Someone very well may enjoy the sense of adrenaline that comes from trying to make it back to the surface before oxygen runs out. There are many games that tailor underwater levels more to my liking, which emphasise the speed and control of the land-based gameplay they accompany. So while I still don't necessarily enjoy those water levels in Mario 3D World, and I might avoid them again in future playthroughs, I realise it's not the underwater setting that's the problem, it's the mechanics that they may or may not impose. Thanks for watching today, and a massive thank you to my top tier patrons Doug Slade, Proggy Froggy and David Hernandez. If you'd like to help out the channel and these videos, please consider donating on Patreon.